I decided to marry my boyfriend Ethan and went to meet his family, but they didn't like me at all. They told me to never talk to them again. Maybe it's because they're used to getting what they want because they're attractive. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were mean and jealous of anyone who had something they didn't. Unfortunately, they targeted me. Even my father-in-law and brother-in-law joined in and rejected me too. But a few months ago, I got back at them in a big way. I'm Amy, I'm 27 now, and I'm living happily with my husband, cute kid, and my parents. It all started 3 years ago when Ethan proposed to me. Ethan and I worked together and bonded over our love for movies. We went on lots of movie dates on our days off and eventually started dating. Ethan was easygoing and got along with everyone at work, earning him many friends. He didn't like arguments and was the type to forgive easily. I had a crush on Ethan ever since I joined the company, so when he asked me out, I was thrilled. I looked forward to work every day just to see him. Whenever I messed up at work and felt down, he'd stay up all night listening to me. That's when I knew I wanted to be with him forever. Ethan had dreams of starting his own business, and I wanted to support him every step of the way. I was ecstatic when Ethan proposed to me. There was no reason to say no, so I said yes right away. We decided to get married. The weekend after Ethan proposed, we went to my family's house to introduce him to my parents and tell them about our plans. Ethan got along really well with my parents, especially my dad. They liked him a lot and were happy for us. Seeing Ethan chatting happily with my parents made me feel really lucky to have him. The next weekend, we were supposed to visit Ethan's family. I realized I didn't know much about them, but I didn't think too much about it. Ethan had been living alone, so I figure he didn't keep in touch with his family much. The night before we were supposed to visit Ethan's family, Ethan told me over the phone, "My parents might be a bit strange tomorrow, but don't stress about it." I was a little worried about what he meant by strange, but I decided to wait and see. Since we had to wake up early the next day, I didn't dwell on it too much and went to bed. The next morning, we met at the station around 10 a.m. to go to his house together. It was my first time visiting his family since Ethan lived alone. Despite trying to calm my nerves, I felt anxious all morning. As we walked, I was so nervous that I could hardly focus on what Ethan was saying. Standing before me was a magnificent mansion, resembling a castle. The garden sprawled out grandly, and I couldn't help but feel intimidated at the thought of Ethan growing up here. However, his gentle smile helped ease my nerves as he said, "Feeling nervous? It's all right. Let's go." As soon as the front door opened, my mother-in-law greeted me warmly, saying, "You've come such a long way. You must be tired. Come in quickly." She was slender, impeccably dressed, with perfectly styled hair. Her expensive attire was flawless. Inside, I was greeted by my father-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their children. Thankfully, everyone except my mother-in-law welcomed me with smiles, which put me at ease. I was warmly embraced, took a seat on the sofa, enjoyed dinner while chatting with everyone, and announced our engagement. Ethan's family was thrilled, especially my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who exclaimed, "We're so delighted to welcome such a lovely girl into our family." Their warm reception touched me deeply. The pleasant conversation flowed effortlessly. Ethan's family was quite chatty, and as stories were shared, I learned that my father-in-law owned a company specializing in package tours, with my brother-in-law working there as an executive director, aiming to take over the business in the future. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were devoted homemakers who also pursued interests like dance classes and flower arranging during the day. My sister-in-law took great care of her appearance and exuded confidence. My father-in-law was exceptionally kind, always wearing a smile and effortlessly easing any nervousness I felt by engaging me in various topics. I was genuinely relieved to see he was a good-hearted person. In the midst of the pleasant atmosphere, a conversation with my father-in-law shifted the mood. "Amy, I heard you work at the same company as Ethan. Are you a temporary worker there?" "No, I actually started as a full-time employee right after finishing university, just like Ethan. The company where Ethan and I work is a well-known corporation, highly sought after by job seekers. Securing a full-time position there is quite competitive. But fortunately, I was hired fresh out of college." "Oh, really? Where did you graduate from?" "I graduated from Harvard." That's incredible. That's incredible. You must be very talented. I'm proud to have someone like you joining our family." Amy's amazing, isn't she? She's hardworking, skilled at her job, and sharp-minded. I'm thrilled to marry her. Both my father-in-law and Ethan praised me, which was a bit embarrassing. In reality, I attended a prestigious university in the US, studying tirelessly throughout high school, even sacrificing sleep. My parents, despite financial challenges, worked hard to put me through college. I was determined to attend a good university, secure a decent job, and one day repay my parents for their sacrifices. I've been striving towards that goal wholeheartedly. Engaged in a lively conversation with others, I noticed my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had fallen silent. Concerned, I tried to steer the conversation in a different direction. Seeing a beautiful flower arrangement on the table, I asked my mother-in-law, "Did you arrange those flowers?" "They're beautiful." Her response was unexpectedly curt. "What? You, a professional in a top-tier company interested in housewives' hobbies?" Confused by her sudden change in demeanor, I wondered why she was now being cold when moments ago she had been smiling. My sister-in-law added, "With your high education, you probably think housewives only talk about flowers." I hadn't meant to imply that at all. Feeling overwhelmed and unsure of how to respond, tears threatened to surface. Ethan intervened. "Hey, both of you, cut it out. Amy doesn't look down on anyone." His words were comforting, but I couldn't find the words to apologize or defend myself. So I remained silent, keeping my head down. Looking around, I noticed my father-in-law, who had been drinking since noon, snoring loudly and passed out on the sofa. My brother-in-law seemed bored, yawning and scrolling through his phone, creating a tense atmosphere in the room. When Ethan suggested it was time to leave, I felt relieved to escape the uncomfortable situation. On our way back to the station, Ethan apologized, saying, "I'm sorry about today. My mom and sister have a lot of pride, especially when it comes to their high school education." According to Ethan, my mother-in-law had worked at a flower shop right after high school, where my father-in-law had fallen in love with her at first sight. She was undeniably beautiful, attracting many customers to the shop just to see her. After persistent pursuit, they started dating and eventually got married. Even now, it seems my father-in-law is still smitten with my mother-in-law, always doing whatever she asks. My sister-in-law was also stunning. She and my brother-in-law had been classmates in high school and reconnected at a reunion in their early 20s. Seeing her beauty, my brother-in-law fell head over heels, and after persistent efforts, they ended up together. Like my father-in-law, my brother-in-law seemed to follow his wife's lead. Despite my higher education, I couldn't understand why they felt insecure. They were both beautiful women with caring husbands who always looked out for them. Yet, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of unease and doubt about marriage. Nevertheless, with approval from both families, we began planning our wedding. Although some uneasiness lingered, I believed that open communication would help us understand each other better. "Don't worry. I'll always support you, Amy," Ethan reassured me, helping me stay positive. After nearly 6 months of meticulous preparation, just a day before our wedding, Ethan's phone rang. It was his mother. After a brief conversation, Ethan's shocked expression hinted at something unexpected. "What? Why? We can't just change it." "Hold on," he said before the call abruptly ended. When I asked what happened, I awaited his response anxiously. Ethan stunned me with his revelation. "My parents, they just informed me that they won't be able to attend the wedding tomorrow." "What? What do you mean?" I was utterly shocked and anxiously pressed Ethan for more details. According to him, it appeared that his parents had forgotten about a trip they had planned for the same day as the wedding and couldn't make it. I couldn't believe it. My future in-laws were backing out of the wedding at the last minute. We stood there, bewildered, struggling to comprehend why this was happening. Despite numerous attempts, we couldn't reach his parents for an explanation. Desperate for answers, we rushed to their house, only to find it dark and deserted, with no signs of anyone being home. I expressed my concern to Ethan. "When I visited your family the other day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might have upset your mother and sister." Things felt tense towards the end. Ethan replied, "I've mentioned it before. Both my mother and sister have strong personalities. Smart women can be a bit stubborn. Even if they were upset, I wouldn't necessarily know." When I questioned, "But why would your father skip the wedding too?" Ethan explained, "My dad and brother-in-law, they tend to prioritize keeping the peace with their wives. They'd probably sided with them to avoid upsetting my mother." He looked troubled as he spoke, leaving me speechless. Ultimately, despite our efforts, we couldn't reach Ethan's family even on the day of the wedding. We had no choice but to proceed without them. Why did this happen? Did I inadvertently do something wrong? And was it truly just a matter of them forgetting about their planned trip to the hot springs? Even if it was, I struggled to understand why Ethan's family would choose a vacation over attending their own son's wedding. My parents, who had arrived at the wedding venue, were taken aback upon learning that Ethan's family wouldn't be attending. Ethan apologized to my parents, saying, "I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience my parents have caused." My parents reassured him, "It's not your fault, Ethan. Please don't worry. Let's just enjoy the wedding." Despite their comforting words, their expressions betrayed a hint of complexity. I felt awful for putting my parents in such a situation on our special day. Throughout the reception, we overheard whispers from both Ethan's friends and mine, all wondering, why aren't Ethan's parents here? Even our boss, who graciously offered to give a toast, inquired, "Where are your parents?" We were left grappling with how to respond. We couldn't possibly reveal the truth. My parents chose to go on a trip instead of attending their son's wedding. So when asked about Ethan's parents, we simply stated that they were feeling under the weather. What was meant to be a joyous occasion turned into a mentally draining ordeal. A few days after the wedding, Ethan and I visited his parents' house to share the news that the ceremony had concluded. "Oh, Amy, it's been a while. How was the wedding? Did you have a good time? I'm sorry, I couldn't attend because of my trip that day. I meant to bring you back a souvenir, but things got busy, and I forgot," she replied without a hint of remorse. Despite feeling sadness inside, pondering why I deserved such treatment, I forced a smile to maintain peace with Ethan's family. Ethan expressed his frustration, canceling the day before the wedding and having all the relatives miss out. "Is that even normal? If you didn't want to come, we could have spared you the invitation." His sister-in-law added, "I would have come if Amy wasn't the bride." What? What does that mean? I was bewildered, my head spinning with confusion. Then, to further escalate the situation, the mother-in-law chimed in, "Don't just blame us. I wanted to witness my son's special day, but Amy ruined it. I'm a victim too. I demand an apology." Ethan defended me, his voice firm, as I was too stunned to respond. "Amy didn't cause anything. She's innocent." Finally, the usually silent father-in-law erupted, "Enough. How dare you barge in here on our day off to complain? Is that why you're here? Get out." With furious anger, he expelled us from the house. As I slipped on my shoes at the doorway, a sharp prick startled me. Ouch! In a rush, I lifted my foot, spotting a caterpillar squirming inside my shoe. Roast out, I hopped outside and released the critter. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who had been observing, asked, "Are you all right?" with a spiteful chuckle. Eager to leave, I mumbled, "Sorry for the trouble," and made a swift exit. But my mother-in-law halted me. "Amy, please avoid getting involved with us, except for weddings and funerals." Huh? Before I could inquire further, she shut the door abruptly, ending the exchange. Confused about my apparent offense, all I wanted was to bond with Ethan's family. During the journey home, Ethan repeatedly apologized. "You don't have to force yourself to engage with my family anymore. I'm truly sorry." Hearing that my in-laws would have attended the wedding if I weren't the bride left me feeling guilty and perplexed, even though I didn't understand why. I couldn't help but sympathize with Ethan's predicament. The next morning, I woke up to an intense itchiness all over my body. It was unbearable, prompting me to leap out of bed and rush to the mirror, only to discover that my entire body was inflamed with fiery red swelling. Despite having to work that day, I quickly called in sick and headed to the dermatologist. It turned out that the swelling was a reaction to caterpillar stings, yes, from the one I encountered the day before. The itching was agonizing, and for nearly 2 weeks afterward, I struggled to sleep due to the severe discomfort. Reflecting on the incident, I recalled noticing my brother-in-law near my shoes at the front door when I visited Ethan's house. In the past, I might have dismissed it as a harmless mistake, but given the strained relationship with my in-laws, I couldn't shake off the feeling of distrust. About a month later, Ethan fell ill and was hospitalized. He had been experiencing persistent stomach pains for a week before seeking medical attention. Concerned, I insisted he take a day off work and accompany him to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with a probable gastric ulcer, requiring further tests and hospitalization. Despite the directive to only contact them for weddings or funerals, I hesitated but ultimately decided that Ethan's parents deserved to know, so I mustered the courage to give them a call. "Hello," my mother-in-law answered the phone. My hand trembled, and I felt queasy as it rang. That's how much my feelings toward my mother-in-law had soured. "Hello, it's Amy. I'm sorry for not reaching out sooner. I have some news about Ethan." "Oh, what is it this time?" Her dismissive tone grated on me. "Ethan's been hospitalized. They suspect a gastric ulcer and are running tests." "Ah, a gastric ulcer? Probably from overwork. Don't bother me with trivial matters." "I'm busy." "Trivial? Don't you care about Ethan?" "I don't want to hear from you." "I'll make it clear. I want nothing to do with you. Don't contact me again. I'm worried about Ethan." "I'll call him directly." Suddenly, my brother-in-law took the phone. "You're too persistent. Can't you see it's not a good time? I don't know what's going on with Ethan, but your constant calls are annoying." With that, he hung up abruptly. The click of the receiver felt like a breaking point. Their cruel words echoed in my mind. My mother-in-law's rejection, even with her son in the hospital, and the whole family's unilateral dismissal left me seething. They don't want me to bother them. Fine. I want nothing to do with that family. I won't ever reach out to them again, no matter what. Following the incident, Ethan's test results showed no major abnormalities, confirming a mild gastric ulcer. With medication and care, his health improved significantly. I shared everything with Ethan, who, with determination, said, "Let's distance ourselves from my family. Amy is all that matters to me now. If they can't accept her, they're not family, regardless of blood ties." A year later, Ethan left his job to pursue his longtime dream of starting a software sales business. This dream had been brewing since before our marriage, and he used his experience to make it a reality. Ethan dedicated himself tirelessly to this endeavor. And though we're still in the early stages, witnessing even a small part of his dream come to life filled me with joy. Our happiness multiplied when, a year into his business venture, we welcomed a healthy baby boy into our lives. My parents were thrilled about their new grandchild. Despite the nearly 2-hour journey from their home to ours, they visited frequently, filling each day with happiness. Naturally, we didn't inform Ethan's parents about the birth. Even if we had, they likely wouldn't have shown interest anyway, so it didn't bother us much. Since the phone call, we hadn't heard anything from them, which was a relief. It felt comforting to be free from the stress of dealing with Ethan's peculiar family. Then, several months later, something unexpected occurred. The novel coronavirus began spreading globally, prompting our country to declare a state of emergency and urge people to stay home. News coverage was dominated by discussions about the virus, highlighting its impact on industries like restaurants and tourism. Seeing the challenges these sectors face made my heart ache. I found myself wondering about the state of Ethan's father's package tour company, but honestly, it wasn't my concern. In fact, I might have even smirked at the thought of how his business was faring. Despite this, Ethan's own business was thriving. Although there were initial financial uncertainties, our income had surpassed what Ethan earned as an employee, and things were going smoothly. During this period, Ethan started receiving numerous calls from his parents' home. However, he seemed hesitant to engage with them, often ignoring the calls altogether. Voicemails piled up, but Ethan chose not to listen, adamant about distancing himself from his family. I frequently reassured Ethan, saying, "You don't need to worry about me. It's okay to reach out to them." Despite my disdain for his family, I felt guilty about potentially causing Ethan to sever ties with his parents. Yet Ethan remained steadfast, insisting, "Amy is the most important person in my life, not my parents. If they can't accept you, even as my parents, they hold no value to me." I felt a mixture of sorrow and admiration for Ethan's unwavering loyalty. Despite Ethan's ongoing refusal to answer calls from his parents, a letter arrived one day from their family home. Its contents were straightforward. "Our business is on the brink of bankruptcy, and we need to discuss urgent financial matters." Their audacity was astounding, considering they had cut ties with us. They demanded immediate contact, but we chose not to respond. Let them deal with their own troubles. That's what they deserve. Soon after, my phone began to ring incessantly. Since I was at work, I didn't notice the call, but a voicemail was left behind. It seemed Ethan's parents, unable to reach him, resorted to contacting me despite my earlier request not to. Reluctantly, I listened to the message only to hear, "Is this Amy's number?" If Ethan keeps ignoring me, I'll pay him a visit. Make sure he knows. That was the extent of the message. 2 days after the voicemail incident, Ethan had a rare day off as it was Saturday. We were enjoying a peaceful family time at home, discussing our plans for the day after lunch when the doorbell suddenly rang. Glancing at the monitor, I saw my 4 in-laws standing outside. Ethan, noticing my shock, approached to see for himself. With a heavy sigh, he suggested we ignore them, confident they would leave if we didn't open the door. But I felt differently, thinking it would be pitiful to leave them standing outside after they had made the effort to visit. Ethan hesitated for a moment before agreeing to unlock the door. But pitiful? I couldn't bring myself to feel that way about such unpleasant in-laws. I intentionally kept the voicemail from Ethan, knowing it would draw them to our doorstep eventually. My surprise at seeing them on the monitor was just an act. I anticipated their arrival. There was a motive behind letting Ethan's parents into our home. A retaliation was brewing, and it was time for a showdown. As soon as the door swung open, the 4 of them barged in without any sense of courtesy. Annoyed, they grumbled about the delay in opening the door. Their lack of manners was astonishing. Upon entering, Ethan's mother noticed our son playing happily with his toys and questioned his identity. I calmly replied that he was our son. She remembered my request not to contact us but dismissed it, claiming it wouldn't make a difference since we didn't seem interested anyway. Her contemptuous gaze and muttered remark about my cheekiness only fueled my resolve. I found myself relishing the moment and decided to address Ethan's father directly. So, what's the purpose of this unexpected visit? It would have been courteous to inform us beforehand if you intended to drop by, I remarked casually. Ethan's father, visibly irritated, retorted, "Didn't you read the letter?" "You mean the one that arrived 2 days ago?" I countered. His response was laced with frustration. "If you had read it, you would have contacted us." It clearly stated the urgency of the matter. Swiftly, I replied. "Oh, you wanted me to reach out? But you made it clear you wanted no association with us." I saw no reason to comply. Suppressing my amusement at the stern expressions of the 4, I noticed Ethan, my husband, staying silent, wisely allowing me to navigate the conversation. It was incredible to think he was raised by parents lacking such basic sensibilities. Suddenly, my father-in-law's demeanor shifted, and he began pleading, "I apologize for the past. With COVID wreaking havoc on our business, cancellations are rampant and new bookings are non-existent. If this persists, we face ruin. Can you spare some financial assistance?" I remained composed as I responded, "I sympathize with your situation, but I must decline. It's not easy to extend help to someone who's severed ties." However, genuine remorse might sway my decision. Enraged, my father-in-law erupted, attempting intimidation with a furious glare. Unfazed, I stood my ground, resolved to handle things my way. I made no demands. The choice was theirs. "You're welcome to leave if you'd like," I offered calmly. My father-in-law's frustration began to boil over, and he started pleading. "Please, I'm sorry. Help us out." Ignoring his pleas, I maintained my composure. Eventually, he instructed the others to apologize as well, and soon all 4 of them were begging. With a smile, I politely declined, saying, "No, thank you." Enraged by my refusal, my father-in-law slammed his hand on the table, shouting, You act all high and mighty when I'm humbling myself." He grabbed my collar, catching me off guard. Before I could react, Ethan intervened, firmly stating, "Dad, don't lay a hand on Amy." Ignoring Ethan's warning, my father-in-law demanded, "Are you taking your wife's side over your parents?" Ethan's response was unwavering. "Amy is the most important person to me right now. I can't condone mistreatment towards her, even from my parents. If you can't sincerely apologize to Amy, then leave." Infuriated, my father-in-law struck Ethan in the face. Amidst the chaos, I attempted to reason with him, but his anger only intensified. He began kicking Ethan while he was down, prompting me to intervene. As I tried to restrain my father-in-law, he pushed me aside, causing me to collide with the table's edge. Pain shot through my head as I realized I was bleeding. In a panic, I shouted for help, hoping someone passing by would hear. The other 3, frozen in shock, watched as my father-in-law continued to rampage, demanding money. Desperate, I opened the balcony window and cried out for assistance, fearing for our safety. 5 minutes later, the police arrived on the scene. My father-in-law's demeanor quickly shifted, attempting to downplay the situation by claiming it was all a misunderstanding. He even went as far as to accuse me of being drunk and shouting nonsensical things. I wasted no time in explaining to the officer the truth of what had occurred, urging them to take action against my father-in-law for assaulting both my husband and me and causing property damage by ransacking our home. In a sudden outburst, my father-in-law denied any wrongdoing and lashed out, punching a hole in the wall. His actions led to his immediate arrest, with the other three also taken in for questioning. My father-in-law was subsequently held in jail for some time. While my husband suffered only minor injuries, I required 10 stitches for the wound on the back of my head, leaving me with a sense of guilt for inadvertently putting him in harm's way. It later became apparent that my in-laws had been manipulated by jealousy, with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law instructing my father-in-law and brother-in-law to treat me coldly. Unable to resist their influence, they followed orders, leading to the series of events that unfolded. The incident with the caterpillar in my shoe was likely orchestrated by my brother-in-law, encouraged by my sister-in-law's envy. Jealousy has the power to drastically alter lives, and its consequences can be unforeseeable. The aftermath of their actions served as a stark reminder of the destructive nature of envy and the lengths some will go to in its grip. As expected, my in-laws faced financial ruin. Their business went under, and they lost their home, now residing in a modest apartment. With my father-in-law and mother-in-law nearing 70, finding employment is challenging. My brother-in-law, who coasted through life relying on his father's position, now struggles to secure steady work and is relegated to a part-time job at a convenience store. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law, lacking career prospects and plagued by a selfish nature, finds it difficult to hold down any job, leaving her mostly confined to their home. Following the incident, my father retired, prompting a decision for my parents and us to live together. Surprisingly, it was Ethan who suggested this arrangement, concerned about my parents' well-being in their senior years. With my parents caring for our son during the day, I've been able to return to work, feeling secure in balancing childcare and my career. Life with my loving husband, supportive parents, and cherished son is truly fulfilling. I am committed to never forgetting the gratitude I feel for this happiness.